Thank you. So yes, I'm Gez, and I've been working Agile for about 10 years now. And I had a bit of an odd journey kind of starting with Agile really, because I kind of got thrown at the deep end. And I think that's a lot of the way people kind of generally get engaged with it quite often is just being told, right, you're doing Agile now, and you smile politely and kind of read the internet a bit and see if you can work out what it is and so forth. And it gets kind of tricky from that point of view, because it's actually a really kind of difficult thing to understand sometimes. So what I'd like to do tonight is just kind of spend 20 minutes talking through basically what Agile is and what it isn't, and everything to do with it in that sense in a kind of tiny nutshell. But first of all, does anyone kind of feel like they don't fully understand Agile here? Is anyone kind of fantastic? Lots of hands. Because I really like this quote from a guy called Mike Cohn, who's kind of one of the bigger names within Agile, I suppose. And he says, a true expert at Agile realizes that he or she can never be an expert at Agile. So I was kind of thinking of asking, who here is an expert in Agile? But actually, put your hand up, you're not. So if you don't understand Agile, don't worry about it. Don't feel like this is this mysterious thing over there that techie people understand or only certain people understand. I don't understand Agile fully. No one can understand Agile fully. That's why Amy was saying it's a bit philosophical, some of this. It's a mindset, it's a state of being. I kind of see interesting similarities between Agile and Zen Buddhism to some degree about the whole uncertainty thing. So it gets kind of quite out there at times. But first of all, I kind of want to talk about what it isn't, because I think as much as you can say Agile isn't a set thing, there's a lot of shades of grey and a lot of different arguments within it. You can pretty clearly contrast it with something else. And this something else is what's traditionally called Waterfall. And this is the way projects are generally delivered. It's the way we're brought up to believe the world happens, basically. So you have an idea, you kind of scope out the idea, you say that's a good idea, what would it involve doing? Once you've done that, you write a plan, and the more plans you do, the better. The more detailed your plans are, the better the project is going to be. You then agree the process. You say, right, how are we going to deliver this plan? We agree the way we're going to do that. And then you do all the work, you get the thing done, and then you launch it. You do a big launch party, you do a big reveal, big ta-da, this is the thing we've done. And this is the way projects generally happen. It's the way schooling happens. It's the way we're brought up to believe life happens. You have sort of an exam deadline. You have a bunch of things you need to do before this deadline of the exam. You do the exam and you either pass or fail, you succeed, or you have to do it again, kind of thing. So it's really ingrained within us that this is the way the world works. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. To some degree, the world does work like this. If you're building a bridge, for example, you know that gravity will work exactly the same tomorrow as it works today. So you can plan a bridge, because you can say, well, if we put this thing in this way, we know the load-bearing tension of this particular material is this, gravity is this, therefore we'll put the bridge in this way, and we'll do it all in one go, and we'll launch it in one go. Because if you opened a bridge when it was only halfway built, it wouldn't actually be much use. So you do kind of have to plan it up front, scope it, design it, build it all in one go, and then launch it in one big reveal. And that's fine. But what started to happen with Agile is people started to notice, probably from about the 1960s onwards, that actually there were certain places where this really, really didn't work. The US government, for example, Department of Defense, was spending billions on software development and finding that I think it's about 87% of their projects just didn't happen as they had been planned. And only 2% of them actually went live as they had been planned without significant changes. So they were kind of going, well, we're doing this and it's the way we think things should be done, but it's just not working. So people started looking at different ways of doing it. And they started realizing that what was happening was that the environments where it wasn't working were what I like to call complex, fast-paced, and uncertain. So a complex environment is one where there's lots and lots of different things acting within it, all interacting in different ways, and you can never be quite sure what's going to interact with what, where, at what point, which doesn't happen with things like bridge building and gravity, because gravity will act in a certain way on these materials, and that will be fine, and what will happen there. It's not particularly complex. But where you get lots and lots of complexity, lots of emergent things happening, this sort of approach kind of falls down. When this is all happening really, really fast as well, it's really difficult to keep up with. When you can say, well, we can plan the next 3 years quite accurately and it will happen exactly this pace and we know what will take place, that's fine. When things are really, really changing quite rapidly, upfront planning kind of doesn't work. And fundamentally where there's uncertainty as well. You go, well, actually, this is an uncertain thing. We can't know what's going to be happening. in the next month, the next 2 months, the next 3 months. So yeah, where you get complexity and fast-paced and uncertainty, that's where Agile's useful. And I think that's really important to understand because sometimes people get a bit carried away with Agile. It's kind of a buzzword at the moment. Everyone loves the idea of Agile. So you kind of start putting Agile into places where you just don't need it. If you haven't got complexity and fast-paced and uncertainty, actually Agile's a nightmare. Agile's really horrible. A good Agile coach would never say everyone should adopt Agile, because sometimes you don't need it, sometimes you do. It's kind of where you've got this complexity and this fast-paced uncertainty that you need it. And that's why you find it a lot in software development, because software development is a very new emergent thing, or at least has been for the last 20 or 30 years. Really, really new, really emergent, really complex. The internet as well, hugely more complex, because you've got so many more points of connection now between people interacting in all sorts of different ways with things changing really, really quickly. You need a kind of Agile approach to keep up with that. And as much as I say Agile isn't sort of understandable, it isn't knowable, no one can be an expert in Agile, if you get anything that's the closest you get to a kind of canonical, this is Agile, it's a thing called the Agile Software Manifesto, the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. And basically there are lots of people doing various shades of Agile, different Agile things, who all got together in a ski resort in 2001 in a place called Snowbird in Utah in America, and wrote this. And it's really, really simple. It's really nice. If you go to, I think it's agilemanifesto.org, it's there and you can just have a read of it. And it basically says you value 4 things over 4 other things. So you value individuals' interactions over processes and tools, you value working software over comprehensive documentation, and for working software you could just make that as just stuff. We value delivering stuff over documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. And it's interesting to note there, because some people kind of go, well, Agile, you don't document anything, you don't plan anything, it's just getting on with it, it's just doing stuff. Actually, you do still have following a plan in there, you do still have documentation in there, you just don't value it over working software or over responding to change. So you can have a plan, but you're open to that plan changing. You don't say, well, you know, we haven't done our plan, therefore we failed somehow. You go, we haven't done our plan, and that's fine, that's what we expect. We expected not to do the plan, but we still had a plan to some degree. So the Agile Manifesto is really, really nice. It's very, very simple. There's 12 principles that sit behind it that I've not included here, but again, really, really simple and quick to read. And if you ever want to go, is this the Agile thing to be doing? Referring back to the manifesto and going, well, are we prioritizing individuals and interactions over processes and tools in this thing? If we are, probably Agile. If we're not, probably not. But kind of like a philosophy, that's really hard to do. You can't just go, well, we'll follow this every day and do Agile, because it's not really a thing you can do. So what people then did was came up with what are called Agile frameworks, and I've been reading Agile stuff for quite a few years now, and I've counted 17 of them so far. There may be more. I can occasionally come across new ones and add them in here, but there's loads and loads of different Agile frameworks, and basically they're the way you do Agile on a day-to-day basis. They're your process, they're your thing you follow that takes the manifesto and turns it into an actual thing. And like I say, loads and loads of different ones. The one down the bottom there, bottom right, Scrum, is the one probably most people have heard of, most people have used. Some people even associate it with Agile. They say Agile and Scrum are kind of interchangeable, and they're not. Scrum is just one of the many Agile frameworks, but it's far and away the most popular framework, and it's probably the one you've come across if you experienced Agile at all. And Scrum's really simple. It basically has a nice little cycle. So before, with the Waterfall thing, you'd start at the start, you'd write a plan, you'd agree the process, you'd do the work, you'd deliver it. Scrum's much more circular. So at the start of, say, a 2-week chunk of time, a 2-week sprint, a 2-week iteration, you do a little bit of planning, because you do planning in Agile, you just do a small amount of it. You say, right, we're going to plan the next 2 weeks. Then every day you get together, you prioritize individuals and interactions over processes and tools, so you all stand up together and have a quick little meeting going, what are we doing today, what did we work on yesterday, have we got any blockers? Every now and again you have a thing called story time every 2 weeks, where you kind of look at the work kind of a lot further down the line, what's coming up. Then at the end of the 2 weeks, you get everyone who's interested together and go, look, this is what we produced in the last 2 weeks. What do you think? And they give you feedback. And then if they go, that sucks, you go, fine, that's great. And you throw it away, you don't do that anymore. If they go, that's brilliant, you go, great, in the next 2 weeks, we'll do more of that then. So rather than doing this, designing it all up front, building it all, then doing a big reveal, and having everyone at the big reveal point go, wow, that's totally not what we thought it was. The environment's moved on, everything's changed, everything's been really fast paced. You just do it in 2 weeks. So the worst you have to do is throw away 2 weeks of work rather than throwing away 3 years of work or whatever. And then a really nice bit, you have a retrospective at the end of every 2 weeks. So you get together as a team and say, how are we working together? Could we work together better? And how would we do that in the next 2 weeks? Whilst previously you would say, right, we agree the process for delivering this up front and we'll stick to that process. In Scrum, you kind of go, well, is the process working? Could we improve the process? It's really, really nice. And I think people quite often, like I say, get confused with the difference between Agile, Scrum and Sprint and all these different words. And I use a little analogy for explaining it really, that kind of it's a bit like religion. So if you imagine Christianity, big religion has a guiding document called the Bible. Agile is kind of like a big philosophical religion thing with a guiding document, this Agile Manifesto. But then within Christianity, you have Catholicism, Methodism, Anglicanism, different versions of doing Christianity on a day-to-day basis. They're all kind of drawn from the same place, but all subtly different in their own ways. And then within those, you have kind of ceremonies you do. And actually in Scrum, they're called ceremonies. A stand-up is called a ceremony. And in different religions, you have different ceremonies, again, that are slightly different from each other. And that's kind of the way I conceptualize the difference between them. Agile is the big overarching thing like Christianity or like any big religion. Then within that, you have different ways of doing that on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. And then within that, you have smaller things. So Agile's the big thing. Scrum is just one of the many frameworks. And then within Scrum, you may have sprints. Stuff does move across frameworks, though. A lot of the stuff people look at in Scrum actually comes from a framework called XP, and those are kind of interchangeable a bit. There's one called Kanban that isn't technically a framework, but you bring into Scrum sometimes as well. So if you're confused, it does get pretty confusing. And Agile people don't help themselves by making this less confusing sometimes. And I really like this quote as well, that fundamentally Agile is a culture. This guy wrote a fantastic paper about why people argue in Agile, because my introduction to Agile was in many ways pretty horrible. People shouting at me that you're doing it wrong, I can't believe you're getting this wrong. And when I've done talks, I've had people come up to me afterwards and go, that happened to me too, I've been put off this. I've had very shouty developers shouting at me that I don't understand this and I shouldn't be going anywhere near it. And that's a real shame. And I think the reason that happens is because Agile isn't black and white, because it's a cultural thing, it's a mindset thing. There is no right or wrong, so you're never going to agree. You will always think the other person is doing it wrong. If you think of the different religions and how much they fight with each other the whole time, over sometimes quite small points of detail, you get a similar thing with Agile sometimes. People get really, really aggressive and violent. Not violent necessarily, but shouting. You know, people get quite red-faced about these sort of things. And yeah, that really annoys me. And it took me a while to realise that someone who's doing that kind of doesn't get Agile. They don't get that this is a mention about collaboration and openness and transparency and being able to talk to people in a kind of equal way rather than going, you're doing it wrong, you must do it this way. Anyone who says canonically this is wrong and that's right is kind of missing the point. So next time if you do end up in an Agile argument, just kind of think back to that and the whole culture point really. But yeah, I also want to talk about 3 things that Agile isn't on a much more prosaic level, because across the years I've had people say, yeah, we're Agile because we do this. And it kind of makes me go, you're really not, you're kind of missing what this is. The first one is that being Agile is about being quicker. And being Agile can lead to you doing things more quickly, but it isn't the same as being quick. And I use the analogy of a fat jogger. If you do jogging regularly, you'll probably become thinner. But it's perfectly possible to be a fat jogger, and it's perfectly possible to do Agile in a slow way. Actually, Agile is about driving up quality if it's about anything, and you don't drive up quality by just doing things as quickly as possible. So don't feel like, you know, we're just doing stuff a lot faster now, we're cutting out a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of paperwork, therefore we're Agile. It's getting towards it, but it's not the same thing. Actually, it should be a relentless focus on quality, not necessarily on speed. The other one, pizza. Developers and pizza just seem to go together. The first Agile contract I sold government, someone genuinely said, why are we paying all this money? Couldn't we just get a whole bunch of developers in a room for a weekend and buy them loads of pizza? Because that's Agile. And I was just like, wow, it really, really isn't. But they still kind of see these, it's a thing called a cargo cult. There was the thing, if you know it, where supply planes in the Second World War, I think it's over near the Philippines, were dropping supplies onto islands, and the natives of the island were seeing these planes dropping stuff, and they were getting their food, and that was great. And then eventually the planes stopped coming. So they built planes, they built replica planes and put them on high points in the hope of attracting back these planes. They thought they were kind of a thing that could be brought back, and it became known as a cargo cult. And quite often people see things like we buy developers pizza, or we have beanbags, or we've painted a wall with chalkboard paint as kind of Agile. And these things can help with agility, of course they can, but they're a bit of a cargo cult, they're not the same as agility. And working from home, it's a shame this, I really like working from home, but it really kind of isn't Agile. I've seen people kind of say, we're adopting Agile working, and I've phoned them up, and they've said, well, yeah, we're letting people work from home and we're hot desking. And actually, one of the principles in the Agile Manifesto says the best way of communicating is face-to-face. The best way to build high bandwidth communication is face-to-face. And if you're all working from home, you're not face-to-face. So actually, it's kind of anti-agility. So just being a bit more flexible and letting people kind of work from home, again, isn't agility. It can be done within Agile, but it's kind of missing the point of it, really. And what I want to kind of end on is the idea that Agile is actually a really, really fundamental change. It shouldn't be this cargo cult. It shouldn't be just, we're buying people pizza, painting walls in chalkboard paint and working from home a bit more. This is the traditional kind of way we see organisations, organisational hierarchy pyramid, CEO at the top, directors, heads of department, managers. And it's actually a feudal, medieval pyramid. This is how the feudal system ran in medieval times. We've abolished that for our country, and yet we still seem to think that's the way we should run businesses. And you have customers at the bottom. But the very first principle of the Agile Manifesto says our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So that's the absolute top principle of Agile, is satisfying the customer. And yet, why then, in the organisational pyramid, do we have the customers at the bottom? Why do we have frontline staff worried about what managers think of them? Managers trying to impress heads of department in order to get promotion, heads of department impressing directors, directors impressing CEOs. When actually, if you're running an Agile approach and your highest priority is the customer, you should probably put the customer at the top. The customer should be your highest priority. Then the frontline staff have to go near the customers, and then if you put them there, then managers have to go beneath them, and you end up with a thing called servant leadership. And this is basically kind of servant leadership. Everyone is serving the people beneath them in the traditional hierarchy. And Agile says it needs servant leadership. Agile fundamentally works really, really well with servant leadership, and works really, really badly in really hierarchical, power-crazed organisations, bureaucratic organisations. So Agile can be quite a fundamental change. Not to say you have to make all of these changes straight away, and if you're not doing all of these changes straight away, you're not doing Agile. But if you start doing Agile in a serious way and you start moving towards it, it will have quite big fundamental changes about the way your organisation runs, about the hierarchies in your organisation. I kind of think you can't run performance bonuses with Agile. I just think they're completely anti-Agile in so many different ways. So maybe you need to get rid of those too. So not to put you off trying it, not to say, don't start and give it a go if you want to try it, but at the same time, don't just think it's a new process. We're so brought up with this idea that there is a process you follow, and quite often people adopt Agile by going, well, we had our old process and now this is the new process. And it kind of misses the point that this is fundamentally a mindset change, it's a cultural change, it's a way of interacting with people on quite a different way. But yeah, I hope that's of use. If you're interested in this some more, do contact me if you want. I've got a YouTube channel, on Twitter as well. But yeah, hopefully that's a whistle-stop tour of Agile. Thank you.